And as of when we shut it off about 5 days ago, there were 556 that had registered. And I told the young lady that takes care of that for us, you gotta pause it. Because the most these 3 rooms together will seat is 180. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. Now, I want to apologize for one thing, because some of you had a tough time finding a parking place. And it's not my fault, because I parked down the street. So I at least left you one. But anyway, I am glad you're here. My name is Nick Farley. The young man back here with the phone and camera is my son, Aaron. We make up a part of what is called Texas Retirement Solutions. One of the young ladies that sits at the table out there is my granddaughter-in-law. She happens to be the mother of 2 of my 6 great-grandkids. And she's also Aaron's daughter-in-law. That's why you'll see her straighten him out every once in a while. She respects me, though. Anyway, she respects him, too. The other young lady, 2 weeks ago, was a client. And now she's a part of our team. Her name is Lauren. And we asked her to come and help us here, because I will be training her to do what we do, and we'll go from there. I want to just touch on 2 things that are in your folder. Number 1 is this. This is very important. This evaluation sheet is my report card, but it also lets you tell us a little bit about you and request our help if you want our help. I'm going to tell you something about Texas Retirement Solutions. We are the only company that will never, ever charge you for any of the services we do for you. And that sets us apart in itself. But we're also the only company that does everything that we do, and we're still expanding our offerings. For example, this particular seminar is an outgrowth out of what clients asked for. They kept coming to us and saying, can you help us with a will or a trust? And so finally, one night Aaron and I were in Cleveland doing a seminar, and there was an attorney in one of the other rooms doing an estate planning seminar. And we deliberately sat in the truck and waited till folks started coming out of there. And when the first lady came out, we said, ma'am, could we ask you a question? She said, yes. How much did the attorney tell you he would charge you to set up a trust for you? She smiled and said $7,000. But he would give us a discount if we signed up tonight. And then she smiled and she said, but we didn't sign up tonight. So Aaron and I decided we needed to do something for our clients. So we started interviewing attorneys, and we found this man. This man is Wade Gertz. He lives in North Lake, Texas. Now, when you look at his picture, you're going to say, first of all, well, he's not as good looking as Nick Farley. No, he's not. There's very few guys that are. And I'm kind of, my mama thought I was very handsome. Most days. Anyway, I want you to look at his picture, and right below his picture, there's his phone number. And there's a 4-letter word out beside his phone number. T-E-X-T. He asked that you text him. Now you say, why does he want us to text him? Because he's like we are. If you went to my executive office, you would find it in my house, and it's a grand total of 9 feet by 9 feet. And somebody said, why don't you go get an office? I said, it would limit us because it would force our clients to have to come to where we are. The way we do it, we can go to the client. And we work a very big area. I did a seminar in Waco, for example, last week. On Wednesday of this week, I'll be going to Waco again, talk to some folks. Anyway, my point in telling you that is it allows us to help people, and it allows him to do the same thing. Because since you're sitting down, and therefore you won't faint, I'm going to go ahead and tell you how much Mr. Gertz charges to do a trust. $750 to $1,500, depending on how much property you have. Now, we're going to talk about wills and trusts, but if you'll notice, the title of this seminar has 3 words at the end of it. Preservation of assets. We live in the most difficult time we've ever lived in the history of the United States. I don't know if you've watched the price of gasoline or not, but it goes up and down daily, and there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason why. My wife is a creature of habit, and she volunteers at First Look in Waxahachie on Tuesday, and that's also the day she does her grocery shopping. And she came home, and I'm helping her get the groceries out of the car, and there's only one grocery store in Texas. Did y'all know that? It's H-E-B. That's where she goes. And so I'm getting the groceries out of the car, and she said, you see that can of coffee? I said, yes. She said, a few months ago, I was paying $5 for that can of coffee. And this has been 2 months ago. She said, today I paid $17. And so what I'm telling you is you need someone to help coach you through getting ready for retirement and through the retirement years. That's where we come in. We do so many things that it would amaze you. We have, of course, Lauren is a realtor too, but we have a realtor that works with us. You say, how come? Because we occasionally run across an older couple, and they say to us, we've got to downsize. We were in Stephenville, and we drove 15 miles out in the country to have this appointment. And we drove back off the road to get to the man's house. So we knew we were driving through his property. When we got to his house, he said, I am 87 years old. My wife is 84 years old. I have 80 acres here. I can't take care of 80 acres. We have to sell this property. And so that became our first requirement. Because he went ahead and said, I no longer have a 401k. He said, I lost all of my 401k money in the .com bubble burst. And so at a time when he and his wife need more money, he needs somebody to do some things for him. I contacted the realtor. She drove 90 miles one way, listed his property, and she's already had an offer on it. That's only been a couple of months. She will sell his property for him, and when the property is sold, she'll help he and his wife find a house because they want to stay in Stephenville. Find a house there that suits their needs, and then I'll come along and help them invest the rest of the money so they can have income for the rest of their life. That's the kind of things we get the privilege of doing. And so I'm going to tell you in advance, this is a ministry for me. Somebody said, are you retired? I've been retired from a lot of things. I'm a retired school superintendent. I'm a retired pastor. But this is the most rewarding ministry I've ever had. Because occasionally we get to make people's dreams come true. And occasionally we get to help people that didn't think they had a future have a future. That's where we come in. And the wheels and trust are just a part of it. So we're going to talk about for just a moment who needs a wheel, who needs a trust. And then I'm going to get into a little bit on preservation of assets. My wife and I have everything that we own with the exception of the 2 cars in a trust. Now let me tell you why we have a trust. Aaron is not really my son. He's my stepson. Now he treats me like a father and I treat him like a son. Sometimes. Anyway, we get along very well. But we have a blended family, in other words. My wife has 3 children. I have 2. That's one of the reasons we have a trust. When I met my wife, I had gone through a divorce. And with the divorce, all my retirement savings got gone. Somebody told me I should have fought more, wouldn't have done any good. Anyway, I said to her, you have some money. I have no money. I don't want your children to think that I'm marrying you to get your money. So I think we need a prenup. And my wife is old school, and she looked at me and said, we won't have a prenup. That's not marriage. So you know how we fixed it? We fixed it with the trust. This was 16 years ago. Because when we set up the trust, by the way, I'm going to tell you in advance that your trust contains your will. A trust is like a box, okay? It's like a safety deposit box. But it contains your will. And so we put in that my children would get a smaller percentage of what we left than her children would. Now, since we've been married 16 years and we've made money together and we have a pretty successful marriage, we've gone back and it's now divided into 5 equal parts. Aaron is one of the executors. My oldest daughter is the other executor. Now, if you've got a blended family, you probably need a trust. Okay? Let me go a step further. If you have a wayward child, you probably need a trust. I had a lady that said to me in one of these meetings, I have 2 children. My daughter has been very good to me, but my son has not been very good to me. And he's been a problem for a lot of years. And so there's no way that I want to treat them the same. There's something else that my wife and I have that most people don't have. We have 4 houses that we serve as the mortgage company for. 2 of the houses were houses we lived in, paid for, and then when we moved, we sold them. And we just mortgaged them to help out the people that were buying them. And we do everything legally. We go through a closing company. We also have them pay us escrow, so we keep the insurance paid up, the taxes paid up. And the last one we did was a little over a year ago, and I laughed and said to my wife, honey, we've only got to live to 105 to get the money out of this house. But that's not really true. Because you see, the people that owe us the money on the houses don't pay us, they pay the trust. And we could be dead and gone for a long time and they'd still be paying the trust. So if you've got something like that, you may need a trust. if you've got one of your heirs that cannot manage money, you probably need a trust. Lady came to one of our seminars, and she was so emphatic, I'll never forget her. She said, I have to have an executor. And that's just the way she said it. And I said, why? She said, I have one daughter and one granddaughter. And my daughter cannot manage money. If I leave her my money, it'll be gone in a year. And she started naming off the money she had, because she had it in a lot of different places. And I finally stopped her and said, can I just ask you something? How much money you got? She said, over $1 million. But I can't leave my daughter $1 million because it'll be gone in a year. So somebody has to give her the money in increments. So I have to have a trust. So there's a lot of things like that. One fellow said he needed a trust because of his gun collection. He said, I've got antique guns at my house. And they're worth a lot of money, and nobody knows how much money they're worth except me. So I want a gun trust because I don't want those guns just given away, because I have a lot invested in those guns. One rancher called me and said, I have 2 sons and 2 ranches. The 2 ranches are a mile apart. Do I need a will or a trust? I said, you need a trust. He said, well, I want to leave one son one ranch and the other son the other ranch. I said, you still need a trust. He said, why? I said, suppose one of your sons ends up divorced and remarried, and his new wife looks at the ranch you left him and says, I really don't want that ranch. I want this ranch. I said, then your 2 sons are going to be in probate court fighting it out. You don't want that to happen. Put it in a trust. If you don't want to pay attorneys after you're gone, get a trust. A fellow came to a seminar in Midlothian, and he said to me when it was over, you're telling people correctly, because he said, my mother passed away over a year ago. I am the executor of her estate. She did not have much money. She did not own property, but we have been in probate court for over a year. Guess who makes money when you're in probate court? Kind of like the guy with the Frown Moorfield 6 years ago. He said, pay me now, pay me later. It would be better if there's any reason that you need a trust to make a text message, Mr. Gertz, and let him tell you you don't need one. Now, with that thought in mind, I want to tell you why I cover some other things. As I told you, we're living in a time when this is the most difficult economy I've ever seen. If you watch the stock market, on Friday, one post on X, just one. It wasn't even that definitive. Drove the stock market, the S&P, down 2.7%. Now today it came back up 1.56%, which means you're still in the hole. And so I want to share some things with you that I feel like I would do less than my job if I did not share it with you. Because it's important that you have your money do what you want your money to do. Which, by the way, another reason to have a trust is because it's your you worked hard and you saved it for a lifetime, then you ought to be the one to get to choose how it goes when you're gone. And you can put that down and nobody can question it and nobody can change it at all. We're going to talk about retirement and why retirement looks different than it's ever looked before. We're going to talk about how to individualize your retirement. Everybody in this room is an individual. None of you are the same. Now, I'm going to tell you why I tell you that. Because this is happening all over this country. Because we fixed it 2 or 3 times. People who work for the government retire from the government. Somebody in that office sends them to see one person. That one person lays one annuity on the counter and says, this is the one you need. We had a lady in Waco. She said, I'm getting good income off my annuity now, but in 5 years it goes to almost nothing. And I said, ma'am, that doesn't sound right. Let me ask you some questions. What I found out that she had been sold was an accumulation annuity. And there's a difference, by the way. An accumulation annuity is designed for younger people that want to grow their future. She had not been sold an income annuity. An income annuity gives guaranteed lifetime income that can even have spousal benefits. We had to fix that problem for her. And it broke my heart because somebody told her something wrong in the beginning and did not explain to her what she was doing. You're an individual. There's another 4-letter word I want to give you tonight. This 4-letter word is even important when you're dealing with Mr. Gertz. B-O-S-S. Boss. When you're dealing with an attorney, you're the boss. When you're dealing with a financial advisor, you're the boss. When you're dealing with me, you're the boss. It's my job to do what you tell me you want done. And to give you enough options so that and enough education so that you can make the right decision. Now, here's one of the reasons that it all looks different. People are living longer. I was kidding some of the ones that got here early and told them to write on there, you don't look 76. In less than 2 months, I'll be saying to folks, write on your sheet, you don't look 77. Because on December the 6th, I'll be 77 years old. We're living longer. We're staying active longer. I go to Sunday school where I go to church. And my wife and I are both 76, and we're among the youngest folks in the class. Our Sunday school class president's 92 years old, been married to his wife 72 years. And they're still going strong. He's still as witty as he was when he was 30. In fact, he says what he believes. Sometimes it doesn't sit too well with some folks. Because one of them is me. He says what he wants to say to me. He knows I can take it. But anyway, we're living longer. Because we're living longer, our money's got to last longer. We're also living with an unstable economy. Who knows what it's going to do? It's crazy. In fact, I'm going to tell you something that was forecast, and I believe it. And I hope you can come back a year from now and tell me you were wrong. The man who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad put out an article a few weeks ago that said the unemployment rate in this country will soon drop to 20%. Or go to 20%. Go up. because of one thing. Anybody know what that one thing is? AI. AI. In fact, at the time I read that article, I thought that can't be true. And then Aaron and I went to a man's house to do an appointment, and his son's sitting over here at the island, popping question after question to me. And that was okay, because I knew he was just trying to take care of his dad. After a while, I said, "What's your email address?" He told me. I said, "I'm sending you a little book that I put together on annuities." I emailed it to him, and in less than 2 minutes, he got down from the island, brought his computer and set it in front of me, and gave me a complete summary of the 20-page booklet. He hadn't had time to read it, but AI did. I started asking AI questions. In fact, I'm going to remind you that day after tomorrow, AEP opens for those of you that are on Medicare. That's when you can change your Medicare Advantage plan. We do Medicare, by the way, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the hardest test we take anytime is the test that the government has that allows us to sell Medicare. It's called AHIP. It's the way they word the questions. You can have all the material memorized and sit and look at a question 15 minutes and think 2 of these answers are right. So you know who helped me on AHIP? AI. I passed it on the first time. It's amazing what it can do. And things like that put us into a state of instability in this country. Because what, I think his name's Kiyosaki, what he said was that AI was going to wipe out all of the entry-level white-collar positions. Because they don't want to pay somebody to do it if they can just ask AI. Retirement plans have changed. Used to, when you went to work, you had a pension. Now you got a 401k. But sometimes they're hard to understand, and the people that talk to you sometimes talk in a jargon that you don't quite comprehend, and you leave after your meeting scratching your head thinking, I hope they take care of my money. The cost of living continues to rise, and the stock market, I've already touched on that, is unpredictable. Sooner or later, taxes are going to have to be increased in this country. This country is $37 trillion in debt. We'll never get out of debt. And what happens, healthcare costs continue to rise. As you get older, you know what you're going to find out? Because some of you already have one. Because you've read statistics that tell you that 3 out of 5 of us are going to need some form of long-term care. And so you've either already got or you're thinking about getting a long-term care policy. 8 months ago, my wife and I dropped our long-term care policy. She said, that's stupid. Because the premium kept going up as we got older, but the benefits weren't going up. You say, so what do? I found something I could invest in that would quadruple, maybe 5 times my money in a period of 15 years. And if I don't need long-term care, it becomes a part of our legacy. We can show you how to do some things like that. What happens in the rest of the world affects us. What goes on in the Mideast affects us. We got a peace accord. Well, that's great, but that probably won't last too long because war's been going on over there since the 2 twins were born. And it's going to continue to be like that. I remember back a few months ago, gasoline shot up, and I'm thinking, how come gasoline's up now? What happened? And then I heard on the news that Ukraine sent 2 drones into Russia and bombed 2 refineries and put them out of commission. So our gasoline went up. That's what we're facing. And it happens instantaneously because of the World Wide Web and worldwide communication going on. I was in Uganda back in April. I actually paid extra on this phone so I could make international calls, and then I got to Uganda and found out I didn't need to pay international calls. Because you know what I have on my phone? I've got Messenger. And all I've got to do is make a phone call on Messenger. I've also got WhatsApp. I can make a phone call on WhatsApp. So I didn't need to pay that. It's amazing what we can do, but all of those things change what happens here. And all this is going on while you're trying to figure out how you're going to leave some money to your kids and grandkids. That's why we have to cover it all. I only want to cover one thing on this. And I just want to show you we've had to change our math in this country. We now measure things in trillions. And most of us have no concept of how much a trillion is. I didn't until I was in Florida. I do church seminars sometimes like this. And I was down in Florida in the church doing a seminar, and we took a break, and the young man running the sound system came to me and said, "You have any idea how many years a trillion seconds is?" I said, "I never thought about it." He said, "I do because I Googled it." I said, "Okay." He said it's 31,709.8 years. So when I got back home, I Googled how long it would take to pay off $36 trillion. That's how much the national debt was. And I said, "Google, we want the United States to pay it off interest-free. We want them to pay $1 million every hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we don't forget the 4. How long would it take?" Google said 4,106.78 years. In other words, we're never going to get out of it. But our taxes are going to eventually have to go up, and that's going to affect your retirement. Now, I want to talk about Social Security, and I leave this in here because it's funny. Social Security was signed into law in 1935 by FDR. Kind of a carryover of the New Deal. And you know what it said? It said if you'll pay in a little money into this tax, then when you're 65, you'll get a pension for the rest of your life. The only problem was the average man died at age 60 in 1935. And the average lady died at age 64. So they didn't figure anybody was going to last all that long to get that money. But along came Ida Mae Fuller. Ida Mae Fuller paid in a grand total of $24.75 to that tax. She got her first check in 1940. It was $22.54. And during her lifetime, she drew $22,888.92 because she lived to age 100. You see, what's hurting Social Security are people like me. I had to be 66 in 2 months to get my Social Security. I was a school superintendent when I was 66 in 2 months. I had a good salary. I got up that morning and said to my wife, "I'm going to the Social Security office today." She said, "Why?" I said, "I'm going to get my check." She said, "You don't need your check." But I went down and got my check started. and I've been drawing Social Security over 10 years. I will guarantee you if I added up how much I have drawn and how much I paid in, I have drawn out more than I ever paid in. That's what's happening with Social Security. When people live a long time, their benefits keep going on. Now, one fella down in Waco said it's not really benefits because we paid it in, but that's really what they call it. So anyway, you keep paying it in, and I want to show you that. Now, I want to show you something for you younger folks, because some of you are thinking, I want to retire as soon as I can. The earliest you can get your Social Security is 62. Now, I want to tell you, be careful if you try to get it at 62. You say, why? Because at 62, you can only have earned income of $23,400. Or you start paying a penalty back. There is a lady that Aaron and I had last year. She worked for the government. She'd been with the government a whole lot of years. And her salary was good. But in late spring, they said to her, your job is no longer going to be in Texas. If you want to keep your job, you're going to have to move out of state. And she said to them, no, I'm 62. I will retire. So before she met us, she had gone down to the Social Security Administration and started her benefits. She had quite a bit of money in the TSP, and we set it up so she could get income off of it the rest of her life. But do you know what she got the privilege of doing this January? She paid back every dime she drew in Social Security last year because she made way too much money. I've had 2 clients that were like that. So I want to tell you, if you're thinking I want to retire early because I've had it, then try to retire at the end of the calendar year and start your Social Security at the beginning of the next calendar year, because it doesn't carry over from one year to the next. You don't want to do it in the middle of the year. But I also want to touch on why what I did was a mistake. You see, my wife was right, I didn't need the money. My wife is 6 months younger than me. When it was time, when she was 66 and 2 months, she called to make an appointment. And the young lady that answered the phone said, ma'am, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. If you'll wait till you're 70, you'll get a lot more money. She said, okay. So she did. Guess which one of us gets the most Social Security now? My hand's not up. Because she was right. And when I look at it and realize that my mother lived to age 87, my dad lived to age 85, I look at their longevity and realize I'm in much better health than they were. In all likelihood, I'm going to make it well into my 90s. I should have waited till 70. Because I would have gotten a lot more. But I didn't do that. Now, I want to touch this with you, because I try to cover everything that could possibly help you. I had a client that I met with him here at mine and Aaron's second office. You say your office out of your home, but we have a second office. It's called Whataburger right up here. And I met with him at Whataburger. And I said to him the same thing I would say to you if you let us help you. Tell me your story. And he said, I've had 3 episodes with my heart. He said, the first 2 times they just put a stent in. But the last time they said, we got to cut you open and do a bypass. He said, so my wife and I went through much of our married life thinking that I would be the first to go. And then he teared up. He said, but last June, now we were in March of 2024 when he said this. This would have been June of 2023, 8 months before. So it was still that new to him. He said, but last June, my wife had a massive heart attack and died. It took us a while to get past that. Because I care about my clients, and if I'd have needed to, I would have just shut the meeting off and said, let's meet again later. But he finally got past it. And I asked him, if you could do anything you wanted to do in retirement, what would you do? He said, I'd move to East Texas and run a bait shop. And I said, what? He said, I'd move to East Texas and run a bait shop. I said, you like to fish that much? He said, yes, I do. I said, here's what I'm going to suggest to you because of your heart issue. You're going to retire at 62. You're going to get your Social Security at 62. We've got this 401k that we're rolling into it, an IRA, and using an income producing annuity as the vehicle to do it. We're going to start the income on that annuity at age 62. And you're going to East Texas. You're going to have a bait shop. He said, it sounds like a winner. Now, there was something else that he didn't know at that time. And he still doesn't know. The fellow he works for is going to buy him the bait shop. Because he's been faithful to him all these years. Anyway, if you have a health issue, diabetes, you've had cancer, you have heart issues, you've got something else that may shorten your life, go ahead and get your Social Security at 62. Don't try to live it out and then miss it. We had another client that said to Aaron and I, and she was only in her 50s, but she didn't work for the government anymore, but she had quite a bit of money in the TSP, that's Thrift Savings Plan. She said, I've got to get this money moved because my family doesn't live long. And I kind of swallowed thinking, why are you even saying that? While we were meeting with her, before we ever got the application written, she called and said, my appointment will have to be postponed because my dad just passed away. He was 62. We got that annuity written for her. Got it going, got it delivered. And she called me and said, would you please pray for my mama? My mama just had a stroke. I have 38 people that I pray for every day. Her and her mama are on that list. And every once in a while, she'll send me a report on how her mama's doing. You look at the longevity. You look at your personal health. Now, one other thing that all of us men especially need to look at is what's going to happen to our spouse when we're gone. Everything my wife and I have has spousal benefits. Even my teacher retirement is spousal benefits. So that if I pass away, she's still going to get it. I have annuities that have spousal benefits. So that her income will not drop if I drop. We need to do that. We need to take care of each other. Sometimes you have advisors that don't tell you that. I know a man who is 80 years old. He had a heart attack about a year ago. And now he's worried about something. Because when he retired, his financial advisor said to him, You get all you can get. We'll take care of your wife with a life insurance policy. So he retired out of California. He now draws $11,000 a month. That's a good retirement, isn't it? But you know what happens? He kicks the bucket. His wife is left with this much because it did not have spousal benefits. So I'm working with him now to try to be sure that if something happens to him, his wife can go. So you look at spousal benefits. I leave the windfall provision up there simply to say, if you're a public school teacher, you don't have a windfall provision anymore. You pay in 10 years of Social Security taxes, you can get a full Social Security benefit. Doesn't affect you anymore. That's one of the last things that Joe Biden did in office, was to sign the Social Security Fairness Act. And it eliminated windfall provision for those government employees, for those that are in professions where they don't pay the full Social Security. I'm going to hit Medicare running, okay? Because I don't want to keep you long. So I told you Wednesday starts AEP. If you need to look at your Medicare benefits, let us help you, please. Make an appointment with us. You don't buy it over the telephone. You don't buy it off of a thing that comes in the mailbox. Because when you got 65, you became the most popular person on your street. You don't want to do that. You want somebody that can make sure your doctor takes it, that can tell you how much your prescriptions are going to cost you, that can make sure your specialist take it, make sure your hospital takes it. We can do all that for you. So you don't let anybody that doesn't do all that for you sell you any Medicare. Here's why we're in trouble in this country with national debt. The government's spending 38% more than it took in 2023. And it's going to happen again and again and again. They need to know that if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. That's just good common sense. I want to mention about taxes in retirement. A lot of folks think, well, if I retire, I have to pay taxes. I paid more taxes last year than I ever paid in my life. Your pension is taxable. Your 401k went in before taxes, it's taxable. Your IRA went in before taxes, it's taxable. Everything up there is taxable except your Roth IRA, because you paid taxes on it before you invested in it. And I just want to keep that up there just to show you. Now, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about one thing on this page. Some of you in here are self-employed. I'm self-employed. By the way, when I was a pastor, I was self-employed. That's the only time I've ever known that a man has as many bosses as he's got church members. But he's still self-employed. Last year, I had a very good year. Now remember, I told you we don't take any money from our clients. Okay. Had a very good year. At the end of the first quarter, my wife is the bookkeeper. She's sitting in her office and she said to me, I just sent the IRS, and she told me how many dollars. I don't even remember that. I said, you what? She said, you made a lot of money. I said, but I don't want to give it all to them. So I called my CPA. Remember I told you we had a CPA. I have recommended a number of our clients to him. He's the best CPA in the world. And I called him and said to him, Greg, if I stop operating as a sole proprietorship and get an LLC, will it save me tax money? He said, no, sir, it cost you tax money. I said, why? He said, then you're gonna be paying corporate taxes and you're still gonna be paying personal income taxes. I said, then what can I do, Greg? He said, you can open an SEP IRA. Now, it looks like SEP stands for self-employed, but it really doesn't, but that's who it's designed for. This year, if you're self-employed, you have to fill out one form and just file it in your files. And all that form says is if any of your employees want the same benefit, you'll work to help them get the same benefit. I filled out the paper, and this year you can put $70,000 in a self-IRA, and you save the tax money until you fully retire. There is not another IRA or a 401k or any other investment you can put that much money in. Aaron started to work with me about April last year, and he even did one last year, and it saved him $6,000 to $7,000 in income taxes. We'll do another one this year, because you can do one every year. And you say, well, you're probably going to work until you die. Well, then my heirs will get it. I just don't want to give it away in tax money. Now, when you get ready to retire, and I'm hurrying, I'll get there in just a minute. When you get ready to retire, one of your favorite things when you get to age 73 is that RMD. You say, what's that? Required minimum distribution. Every year, even if you're not using the money, you have to take out a percentage of the money and pay taxes on it. Because Uncle Sam says, I let you put that money in before taxes, now I want my tax money. Can I be honest with you? I love all of mankind, but I hate RMDs. So I found a better way. I took my IRA, and I took my wife's IRA, and I invested both of them in income-producing annuities, both of which have spousal benefits. So as long as either one of us is alive, we're still going to get those checks. And now, every month, she gets a check put in the bank account for her. I get a check put in the bank account for me. And it's not having to worry with it once a year. Because the RMD is no longer a requirement because I'm getting more income off of that than the RMD would be. We can show you how to do that. I like lifetime, I like guaranteed, I like income, and I like spousal benefit. Now we're going to talk a little bit about 401ks. Here's an important age. You need to take a note right now, 59 and a half. You see, at 59 and a half, you can roll your 401k or your IRA out of the stock market and into some other vehicle if you want to. You can't do it before that because there's a penalty, but you can at 59 and a half. You say, even if I'm still working? Yes, even if you're still working. I have a client that 2 years ago, we had to wait 6 months for him to get to the half, because he was 59 when I met him. 2 years ago, we rolled everything out of his 401k and put it into a guaranteed income annuity so that when he gets 67, he will have a guaranteed lifetime income. It's time for us to go roll some more money out because he doesn't like leaving it to the whims of the stock market because it is volatile. You don't have to do anything, but you can roll it into a traditional IRA and have guaranteed lifetime income for retirement. Now you will see things because you register for this seminar. and you registered for it on Facebook, you're going to see things pop up on your Facebook that's going to tell you, let us roll your 401k into a Roth IRA. Some of you have already seen that. Can I tell you why you don't want to do that? Some of you have worked a lot of years for that company, and you've got $400,000 in your 401k. If you roll that money into a Roth this year, you know how much money you're going to pay on taxes? You're going to pay on all of it. So you don't want to do that. If you want to roll it, let us help you roll it in stages, not all in the same year. Now, this is the history of the bear markets in this country. And I have two things to show you, and then I'm going to go back to WilsonTrucks.com. Last bear market was during COVID, January 2022 to October 2022. It lasted 282 days, and the stock market lost 25.4%. Some of you will remember that because you still hadn't gotten all your money back. Now, I'm skipping a few. Here's what we talk about. We talk about safe money. Money in the stock market is at risk. I like having my money be safe. My wife is the stock market guru. And last year, about 8 months ago, she got in the car at church one Sunday, and she blew me out of the water, first of all, because I didn't know what she was talking about when she said it. She said, now don't get your hopes up. And I thought, what's she about to tell me? And so I just listened. Then she said, it's time to move our money out of the stock market. So we went home and started moving money out of the stock market. Now the rule of thumb is this. You can have as much money at risk as your age as 100 minus your age. We were 75. So we left 25% in the stock market. We rolled 75% into safe investments. We don't worry anymore when the stock market goes down. In fact, my wife told me the other day, I said the stock market, some folks are losing. I have some clients that tell me they're losing, and I said the stock market's up, but you shouldn't be losing. You've got a bad advisor. He needs to take care of you, better care of your money. Anyway, she said if we'd have left our money in the stock market, we would have lost $5,000 this year. I said, really? She said, yeah. She's one of the smartest ladies I've ever met in that area. She buys individual stocks. Her favorite place in the whole world is Home Depot. If they were to call her from heaven and say, Miss Farley, we've checked, heaven is full. You can't get in heaven. Where would you like to go? She'd say, let me go to Home Depot. I told you she goes to H-E-B. That's the only grocery store in Texas, as far as she's concerned. She goes to Home Depot about that often. Anyway, guess who doesn't have any Home Depot stock? Because you know what she does? She looks at it every month. And if it's not making money, she calls the man and says, sell that stock and go buy this stock. She keeps our money in stocks that make money. She loves Tractor Supply. She loves John Deere. She doesn't like Microsoft so much because of Microsoft 365, but we got money in Microsoft because it makes money. I wish she could be a financial advisor on my team. But she's got too many other irons in the fire to do that. But you want to look at safe money, because I want to show you something. Here's what gets you into trouble. And you've never heard of that term before. Sequence of returns risk. What it simply says is if you retire at a time when there's a bear market, then there's two entities taking a bite out of your money. One's the bear and one's you. And sometimes the bear is taking a bigger bite than you are. And so you want to have it safe. Now, I want you to see this, and I like having it on the big screen. This man is fictitious. The $1 million is fictitious. But all of these numbers in this column right here are real numbers. They're really what the stock market did that year. This man had $1 million. He said, I'm going to retire in the year 2000. And I'm only going to take $50,000 a year annual withdrawal to supplement my income. But the year 2000 was a bad stock market year. The market lost 10.14%. 2001 was a bad stock market year. It lost another 13.04%. 2002 was a bad stock market year. Lost 23.37%. By the time he'd been retired 3 years, half his money's gone. Just using the actual figures from the stock market, by the time he gets to the year 2019, he is in the red. His money is gone. You probably didn't think you could go through $1 million like that. This economy, you can go through it faster than that. Especially when you consider health care and the things that we have to pay. Now, I want to show you something else. Here's the safe money approach. This is the exact same annuity that I put the fellow in that I told you we rolled his 401k into a traditional IRA 2 years ago. And he still works every day. This man is fictitious. He doesn't have $1 million, he's got $500,000 in his 401k. At age 60, he says, let's roll it and get it out of the market. We put it into this particular annuity, and he's not going to take income on it for 7 years until he can get Social Security at age 67. He gets a 7.2% roll-up bonus for each year of 7 years. That's more than 50%. So that by the time he gets ready to retire, his income benefit base is over $800,000. Now this particular annuity says his guaranteed annual withdrawal percentage is 7.79%. Most of your stock market gurus tell you to take 4.5 to 5 so you won't run out of money. The insurance company says take 7.79%. His guaranteed annual income for life is $63,368 per year for as long as he lives. You say, what if he lives to 90? For as long as he lives. What if he lives to 100? For as long as he lives. Never goes away. But now here's the good thing. Look at the next line. This one has an impairment multiplier. This man has a stroke. And he can no longer feed himself or dress himself or bathe himself or get up and be mobile. There's 2 of the 6 things he can't do that we do every day. Activities of daily living. The doctor signs a statement saying he can't do 2 of those 6 things. Then his income doubles to $126,736 per year. You know what that gives him the benefit of doing? And this is why I like this. he doesn't have to go to the nursing home. He's not going to break his wife's back lifting and tugging on him for a period of years because he can't take care of himself. He's going to have the money to be able to pay somebody to come to his house and help him do those things he can't do. Wouldn't you rather stay at your house? I would. In fact, Aaron and I live on the same property. It was his idea. We bought property together. We have 2 separate living areas, separated by a garage. My wife parks on the right-hand side of the garage, gets out and comes into our house. His wife parks on the left-hand side of the garage, gets out and goes into his house. Aaron and I park outside. That's how important we are. Anyway, a good while ago, he came and approached us and said, I want us to buy property together. So that when you and Mom can't take care of yourself, I can take care of you. Isn't that noble? I told you we had a trust. Now I'm going to go back to the trust and use Aaron as an illustration. You see, the house we live in is in the name of our trust. You say, do you own it? Yes, we have a note on it. Well, can it be in a trust if it has a mortgage? Yes, it can. Mortgage company just needs to know. But you know what our trust says? Because the deal we had with Aaron was this. I did not want another mortgage. The house we lived in was paid for. And so I said, if I can get in it without a mortgage, then we'll do it. So my wife and I paid our portion down in cash. And he now makes the house payment. Our trust says that if something happens to us, Aaron gets the house. He will pay the heirs the portion we put in on the property, but he gets the house. You know why we wanted it worded like that? We got 5 kids. And you know when Mom and Dad pass away, some of them got thoughts. I mean, I'm good with all my mental faculties now, but let's suppose my memory goes down and my sweet daughter's in there talking to me. And she says, Daddy, I sure do like your house. And I say, honey, when Daddy dies, you can have it. No, she can't. You know how come? Trust says she can't. Now, that gives you control over that. Now, you say, why don't you put it in the trust? I'm glad you asked. How old did I tell you I am? 76. Y'all should have remembered that. Our property taxes cannot go up because we're over 65. If that house was in Aaron's name, they could go up. And we live in the Midlothian School District. Folks are moving into Midlothian every day. And they're building new schools every day. Just like they are in Waxahachie. And those property taxes keep going up, but ours can't. Because it's in our name, in the trust. That's why we did it that way. There are some things that folks that can teach you that will help you in some of those areas. Now, I want to go back and look at trust a little bit more. The advantage of having a trust, it gives you control over your assets, even after you're gone. And I'm going to remind you, this is not saying it to be harsh. My wife and I have worked hard. In fact, you look at me tonight and you say, you must have a lot of money. Well, let me tell you what I drive. I drive a Toyota Camry. I don't drive a Cadillac or a say it is. You see, we don't waste money. You know how many times a week we go out to eat? One. That's her rule. We used to have a date night every Friday night. But now it's become a date afternoon. Because she went on this intermittent fasting. And she likes to eat lunch around 2 or 3 o'clock and then not eat any dinner. And so now we have a date afternoon. That's the only time we go out to eat. Because we've saved all this money. Okay? We want to leave our children something. Shouldn't we have a right to say how it's distributed? After all, it's ours. And we want to be fair. In fact, I'll just tell you an illustration. One of my wife's children owes her some money. And this has been a couple of years ago. Aaron doesn't even know this conversation exists.
I do now.
But she said, I think that she ought to pay what she owes back to the other heirs before she gets her inheritance. And I said, you want me to give you some advice? Get it. Just make it all equal shares. And we chose to do that. You get to make that choice. You don't want somebody that never knew you name sitting on a bench deciding how your money is distributed. And maybe somebody coming in that wouldn't give you the time of day when you were alive, saying, I want my share. You really don't want to do that. You want to have control over it. You don't want to go through probate court. There are some tax advantages, and if you want to know about those, then you'll have to ask the attorney. He'll tell you. Remember, you text him. I want to show you the different kinds of trust. Revocable living trust, irrevocable trust. Now, you have this in your papers. And an explanation of it. My wife and I have an irrevocable trust. You say, well, you just said you amended it. We're still alive. As long as we're alive, we can amend it many times we want to. It just can't be changed after we're gone. Because it's got our word in it. Hey, I've got a family that said to me, I have a special needs daughter. I want her taken care of when I'm gone. Should they need a special needs trust? I had a family that came to me to one of my seminars, actually here over in the old library. He drove all the way from the other side of Lake Whitney to come to one seminar. And I met with him, he and his wife, and he said, we have 4 children, but one of them is deceased. We want all 4 of our kids to share equally in our legacy. You say, well, wait a minute, how can a deceased child share? They have an idea. They said, we love Baylor University because our son was an athlete. We want a scholarship given in his name every year to somebody at that school. And we want it to last in perpetuity. They said, you tell us what to do. I said, the first thing you do is you go set up a trust. That's before we yoked up with this attorney. They said, we're working on it. I said, the second thing you do is you set up a 501c3. And the portion of the money, when you're gone, that is going to your son will operate out of that 501c3. So there's not taxes on it. And then you set it up so that your other 3 children are the executors and they get to choose every year who gets the scholarship. That keeps them active. That's what they set up. You see, you have a desire. And with a trust, your desire can be met. Remember the lady that daughter couldn't manage money? I have 2 daughters. I might need to revise ours. Because my oldest daughter, she got the first dollar she ever made. And she's still making money. My youngest daughter spent the first dollar she ever got on a purse. And then she didn't have anything to put in it. She can't manage money. My wife and I support a lot of missionaries. In fact, I have a ministry. I told you I'm only 76. I have a ministry in Africa. You know what I'm doing in Africa? I'm in the process of setting up a Bible college to train pastors in Africa. Because their governments are closing churches over there because the pastors haven't been trained. And a group of them approached me and said, would you come train our pastors? That's why I was there in April. I'll be going back and I'm still putting all this together. You say, how can you do that? Well, I used to have my own Bible Institute that had a 2-year program, so I know kind of how to operate that. But we might want to leave some money to charity through that. There might be some things you want to bypass. You can have a bypass trust. There's the gun trust. You can have a pet trust. Now, if I didn't already have 2 dogs, I'd tell you just leave me your money and bring the dog to my house. But those 2 dogs I got are the most worthless animals in the world. One of them lays in my office all day long. And he's just waiting on me to move. And if I ever stand up, he said, down, do it. And he runs in front of me. And he'll stop every once in a while and look and make sure I'm behind him. You know where he's going? To the pantry. Because somebody spoiled him by giving him chicken jerky. And so, being a good dad, I go over and get him some chicken jerky. And if I get up again, he wants some more. So I'm not taking care of your pet. You don't want me to. But you can have a gun trust. You can have about any kind of trust you want to. Now, only thing I would advise you on is I would not do what one fella did. He had some property, and he put it in a trust, and he stated in the trust that the property could never be sold. It always had to be maintained by his heirs. He had 4 kids. Only one of those kids cares anything about that property. The other 3 live off somewhere else. But he's honoring his dad, and he's renting it out, doing what he needs to do to keep that property in the family. Don't do that to your children. Be fair. Are there any questions? If not, yes.
What is a ladybird?
A ladybird deed allows you to stay in your house, but you go ahead and put it in the person you're going to leave it to's name. And that's a good possibility that would work for some.
That sounds good for people who have money, though.
Yes.
Y'all have a lot of money. What about people who don't have any money? How many of us?
Making a farm with it. Be sure you turn in your sheets when you leave. And set an appointment with us. Let us help you, please. Thank you. Your will is a part of your trust. Yeah, it goes in the trust. I just went to church so far down. Wake up.
Do you want me to?
Then I do it, I generally do it on Friday night.
Oh, look here, they had a hot shot. Look out. You okay? Come on. Why? You got a peacock? I'd be glad to go. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I said, Jared, take care.
Military retirement. Many of them are.
You take it out. Right, but like on the end of the year, you pay tax.
Yeah.
Or you don't pay tax. Tax free. Right. Yeah, I'm the person, in fact,
I'll do a workshop for 5 or 6 weeks.
So question on trust, so with the guideline, kind of have to put it on for trust. My question is more, instead of put a house, nothing paid on it, the trust, the beneficiary. Come back, it's a certain amount.
It's just in the trust. The trust actually covers everything.
That's all.
So if you were gonna leave it to somebody, it still sits in.
So what can we make?
We'll support it.
But us us living, my wife and I, we still put our home in the trust. We still pay the rent.
Yes, and you do need to tell them more.
Yes,
They can't keep you from doing it if they just home.
how does that affect property tax? Is there any way where we can minimize what we pay out?
Only thing you do in Texas be 100% disabled veterans, because they don't pay it.
Okay, so we still have to pay property taxes and everything. And when we pass, the trust becomes.
Yeah, but whoever you will it.
So my in-laws are getting up in.
And like I said, one that you can sell, it makes them over. Then go out and get some.
Yeah, but see, right now, I'm too late in the game to, buy a property. I gotta put down 60, 80,000.
Oh, you use somebody else's money.
Yeah. Now, if I do it,
Give it a,
But whenever we
guess,
they're gonna will it.
what you call that, hard and, somebody that gonna give you money. You
Right,
gotta pay-
right.
pay them
Right,
back.
yeah.
90 months, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
3 months or 6 months.
Right.
You just got paid back, you gotta split it, about 6 months to a year.
Right. But what I'm thinking about doing now, if I do it, is maybe jumping to multi-family unit. I'm on like maybe 10 units or less.
It's like,
Yeah.
just like you said,
You know, like parking, got something small.
Yeah.
Southeast
I'm
Texas.
saying one for good. Do something like
But
that.
they were.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's
something
something
like
that's
that.
keep starting, the Dallas is, we're gonna get hit, try to put that.
Oh, yeah, you just said that,
You just get tired of running. They gonna do a little
Thank
something.
you, I just saw the problem.
Still grinding.
See, mine's still sharp. You know? So,
They keep you yelling.
yeah. All right,
All
now
right,
take
then,
it,
brother. Take it easy. Hey, man, ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Index universal life insurance. How do it work?
It, works similar to an annuity,
Okay.
except it has a death benefit, most time has living benefits. We do those two.
Okay. Which one you prefer out of the two?
I like an annuity better. I think it'll give you more growth. But it doesn't give you the death benefit, but you can get the death benefit
You can do
from
both.
a term policy.
Yeah. Basically do both.
I know a lady, for example, that I'm getting ready to see if I can help. She has an IUL that she's paying $600 a month for. And the death benefit on the set of things like $100,000. That's not good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna see if I can't do something better for her.
Okay. All right, you take it easy.
Thank you.